This week's episode is brought to you by Giros. He's beauty. He's grace. He has Godzilla's face. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Travis, and with me, as always, he's so fine. He makes me lose my mind. Hey, Mikey, Mikey, Michael.
I can't even finish what I was gonna say. Well, you done screwed up my train of thought, Travis.
Oh, man.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. I will say, if you listen to the last episode, I am so happy. I am so happy that Travis actually used the real intro this time.
Yeah. Well, almost the real intro. I had a little bit of flourish there at the end.
You added way too much flourish, my friend.
Oh, man. So, this is what happens when we're trying to record 3 episodes in a single weekend. Things get crazy.
Travis, you're telling him how the sausage is made now, man. Come on.
I already mentioned it last week that I'm going to be moving house, and so we're having to record all of our episodes ahead of time. So
yada. I know. We know. You're moving.
Yeah, I'm moving into my mansion because podcasting is just paying me so much.
Hey, you're getting all that profit from the T Public store. All those epic designs are finally paying off.
Yeah, no. No. Oh, man. Yeah, T Public thing is so crazy because I do talk about it on Twitter. I don't talk about it on the podcast a lot, but I do talk about it on Twitter a lot. And I don't want people to think I'm pushing the merch because I'm trying to make a profit off of it, because I get like $1 to $2 for every shirt that we sell. So, and we are not selling enough shirts to really make a profit on. My whole reason for making those shirts is because I'm a creative person. I'm a silly, goofy person, and I want to see people wear my silly designs.
Here's how look, just for the listeners at home, here's how the process usually goes. I'll be sitting on my couch, watching TV, and it's like 11 o'clock or so at night, my time, and I'll get a random text message from Travis. It's like, hey, look at this, or look what I made. And it's the shirt he designed. I was like, oh, that looks good. He said, then he'll say, great, because it's already up on T Public. I was like, okay, all right. Well, why ask for my feedback, Travis, if you just go ahead and ship it anyway?
No, it depends on how long you take to respond, because if you respond quickly, then I usually wait a little bit to get your feedback. But if you take a while, then I'm like, it'll be all right. I'll go ahead and put it on there.
It's that idea of the MVP, that minimal viable product that they drill into our heads at work.
Oh, man. So, yeah. So if anybody does buy any of the shirts, it supports the podcast. It definitely does, but it's mostly because if you buy it and you wear it, the satisfaction I get from it is really the benefit that we get. It's not the profit that makes the difference. So,
yeah, in all seriousness, guys, please go buy a shirt. They're really nice designs. I'm joking here. They really are nice designs. I think he just put up a brand new one. I think maybe last night or the night before. Or it would be at the time you're listening to this, it would be last week.
Right.
But yeah, there really are really great designs, guys. Go and check it out. I think it's tpublic.com/user/Kaiju Weekly.
Yeah, it's something like that. TeePublic's weird with their URLs. So if nothing else, we'll put it in the link in the description. And if you do buy a shirt, send us a picture on Twitter or Instagram. Tag us in it on Instagram or on Twitter, because I would love to see some of our shirts out in the wild. I know I'm probably our biggest customer because I have bought my own shirts because I love them so much. I'm like, I bought myself them. So I have my shirts, and I'm going to take some pictures of me wearing them at some point coming up soon.
Travis, the model. He's not just a podcaster, folks. He's also a t-shirt model.
Yeah, just call me Calvin Klein, who is not even a model. But
okay, so before this episode gets it's already off to
it's off the rails.
It's already off the rails. But before it gets any further off the rails, Travis, let's do we got any news to share this week?
Well, yeah, we're gonna jump into the news, so we can go ahead and cue the beady beady.
Sure, let's cue it.
And really, the only news that we have is, as of the time of recording this episode, episodes 1 and 2 of Ultraman Z or Ultraman Z have aired in Japan and also been simulcast on YouTube. So we're going to give our review of these first 2 episodes as our, for this news segment.
Okay.
The third episode will have aired by the time this podcast goes out, but as of the time of recording, only the first 2 have aired. So we will talk about the third one in a future episode.
Sure. Let's go.
So let's get into episode 1. We did kind of give our initial thoughts on the series, or on the first episode, in a previous episode of the podcast, but let's dive into this. What did you really like and dislike about Ultraman Z episode number 1?
Really not a whole lot that I disliked about it, honestly. Honestly, I don't even think I wrote down anything that I disliked about it. It was just a lot of fun. And it's really a unique opportunity that we're getting to watch these in pretty real time. I think they come out for us in the West on YouTube. They come out like the day after they officially air on Japanese television. So we're getting to watch them in fairly real time with the rest of the world. So it's a really interesting opportunity that we get to have here, because it was something that I think we touched on a few episodes back about whether or not we were actually going to be able to do this or not, or we would have to wait until Mill Creek puts it out. But I really liked episode 1. It started off with lots of action, specifically monster action. We all love that kaiju action with the ancient monster Gamis, which, side note, is really one of my favorite original Ultra Kaiju. He's just a really unique looking creature. I think he was the very first. I think he may have been the very first kaiju, because he was in the episode of Ultra Q. I think that was the very first episode of Ultra Q. Anyway. Yeah, I really enjoyed the episode. I can see, Travis, why a lot of folks like the modern Ultraman, the modern series of Ultraman, more so than, say, the classics, like in the Showa era, and maybe even, I guess you would consider it the Heisei era. The ones made in, say, the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, I can see why folks enjoy those more, because I think you and I have talked about it. The Ultraman in these episodes, you tend to root for them more so than than for me personally. I tend to root more for the Ultramen in these modern series like Ultra Orb, Geed, and X, and now Zet, more so than I did in the Showa era. In the Showa era, I'm all like, give me some kaiju, give me that kaiju action.
Right.
But with these, I find myself, like you, Travis, rooting more for the hero than, say, the monster, which kind of weird because it's supposed to be a hero show. But I really enjoyed it. Set design was great. The kaiju, the first kaiju that we got to see was the the giant space shark, Ginagog, I think that's how you say his name. And he's a really unique creature. And then of course the Ultraman Z suits and design for this series is great. I mean, I don't have any complaints, honestly. There's really not a whole lot I can really complain about, except for maybe the comedy could have been better timed. It was a little bit goofy, but it's a kids show. So what do you expect?
Yeah, and that's something that I have come to appreciate with Ultraman, with Super Sentai, with Kamen Rider is, the comedy is a little goofy at times, but I have to remember these are shows that are primarily geared towards kids. like just because us 30-year-old men are watching it doesn't mean they're not still supposed to be geared towards kids.
Right.
I really like how this movie just jumped right into the action.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the episode opens with a monster rampaging, and that is fantastic. The comedy bits I liked. I actually thought the comedy in this episode was actually really good. I have to say though, Savinger, I guess is how you say it.
Savinger.
The robot is so hecking adorable.
There's already little memes and cartoons popping up online of him. Or
he is so great.
What he's supposed to be, but whatever. He's super adorable.
Which is it is interesting because he's not a new thing. He was in a previous Ultraman series. He was in Ultraman Leo.
I was gonna say Leo. Or Ace, but I haven't watched Ace yet. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in Leo. Let me see. Let me double check that just to make sure that his robotic capsule kaiju who first appeared in Ultraman Leo. Yep.
Hey.
So, yeah. So, he is. I like that they keep bringing back things from previous seasons. Like you said, even Gomez or Gomes, the kaiju, the first kaiju that you see is a one that goes all the way back to Ultra Q. So I love that they're bringing that back. I really enjoyed the characterization of Zet. I think that he is really funny, and I like that you get the sense, which I mean, this is his character. This is supposed to be his character, that he's a rookie who is trying to act like the big hero who's here to save the day, but then he has those moments where he just turns into a dork.
Yeah,
and actually, I love that. I love those moments. His interactions with Haruki, the human side of Ultraman Z in this series.
Yeah, his human counterpart is just as goofy.
Yeah. The scene where they're sitting there and Zet is explaining to Haruki how to transform into his Ultraman form. And he's like, "You've got to say my name." Okay, what's your name?
Ultraman Zeto.
Ultraman Zeto. And then he does it, and then nothing happens, and Zet's like, "You have to press the trigger."
Yes,
it's such a good
timing on that was good. Yeah,
it's such a good one. One other thing that I want to really highlight for this first episode, especially, the cinematography.
Oh yes.
The way the camera, especially in the opening segments, when it's down low and it's shooting up from like a human, the human level up at the kaiju as it's stomping through, it is such fantastic camera work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it really gives you the sense of how big Gomez is compared to, humans.
Right.
Which is just then undercut when Savinger shows up because Sevenger is bigger than Gomes, and you didn't even didn't realize it until they shows up, and then you realize Gomes is actually not that big of a kaiju.
I think Sevenger is. I think they said it in episode 2. I know they said it in episode 2. He's 55 meters, and so that probably puts Gomes at say around 45 meters. Because if he's not quite, I don't believe he's quite 50 meters.
Yeah. He doesn't look like he would be that tall. And but I just love that because when it's shot down low, he's shown, to be big and massive, and he's tearing through the city and everybody's running for their lives. And then when you finally have something to actually put next to him to actually have scale, then you realize he's just a little adorable kaiju. He's not even that big.
Just a wee little fella.
He's just a wee little fella. Yeah, so I like that. The cinematography is great. Do you want to move into episode 2 now, or do you want to bring up something else?
I'll just bring up one quick thing. That you talked about the cinematography, and I want to bring up sort of the CG a little bit, because I know some of these more modern series, they do rely very heavily on CG for the Ultraman's attacks, and of course the kaiju attacks. It's just so well done. It looks great. And really, these more recent Ultraman series, they really benefit from some of these larger budgets that Subaraya and these companies put into them.
Oh yeah. I'm probably going to make some comparisons between this show and Ultraman Orb a lot, because Ultraman Orb's one of the ones I just watched fairly recently, so that one is still fresh in my mind. Sure, so I'm going to probably bring some comparisons and contrasts there. But you're right, the modern Ultraman series, the special effects are so well done, both the CG and the practical effects. Yeah,
this was such a fun way to kick off this particular season. It was just a lot of fun. That's all I really got to say. I really don't have any negatives to say about it.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't have any negatives. It was a lot of fun. Getting into episode 2. Now, I will say, with these tokusatsu series, now this is Ultraman, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, all of them. In my opinion, you need to have entertaining characters, because when you get further along in these series, the monster fights can kind of get repetitive. So the only thing that can keep you hooked into the show is the characters. And so that's something I really look for when I get into these tokusatsu series. And this series so far, just in 2 episodes, has it in spades. The characters are so great. Yoko, Shota, and Yuka, which are the other members of the storage team, along with Haruki, are so interesting, and they're funny in their own ways, because they're not Yuka is kind of more of a goofy kind of funny, but Shota has his own level of humor by being so stoic. And then Yoko being this kind of macho, very principled warrior type person, kind of brings her own humor into it. I especially really like Shota because as a leader, he's really smart, and I like how he brings out the best in the team. And also, he was my favorite part of Ultraman Orb, because it's the same actor who played Juggler in Ultraman Orb. So
it's very fitting that the name of this episode, it's very fitting that the name of episode 2 is called The Warrior's Principle.
Yeah, definitely. What did you think of episode 2?
It was a little bit of a slower burn than episode 1. It kind of sets up, episode 1 introduces us to this new world that we're in. It gives us a glimpse at our characters, but it really doesn't explore a whole lot, their personalities, and kind of gives us some of the inner workings of who we're going to be going alongside this journey with during this season. Now, episode 2 does that. We get a little bit more detailed information on who Storage is, and the teammates that all kind of come together to make up this team, this storage team, the storage unit, as I like to call.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a slower burn. I like the fact that they brought back. I have to find the kaiju's name because the name of it escapes me.
Naranga.
Yeah, Naranga. I'm glad that they brought back another classic kaiju. Although I really am hoping for something a little bit more original, sort of like what we got with Ginnegarg, and I'm hoping for some more like that. I don't know how much of that we will get. But if they keep bringing back some of these more classic Ultra Kaiju, but in a with new powers and abilities, and they look a lot better, and yada yada yada, I'm going to be really pleased with it either way, because in this episode we saw our lead. Please, Travis, please remind me what our lead character's name in the show is.
Haruki.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should know that, but I don't.
That's fine.
It escaped me. But we saw Haruki sort of struggle with himself in this episode, sort of struggle with, focusing in on being the warrior that we know he can be. And so that's just sort of that little mini arc that takes place in this episode. And then there's some other, I'll let you get into sort of the female characters of the show, but Haruki, he seems to really struggle in this episode, but mainly he struggles with focusing on being the hero, doing what he has to do to just be Ultraman and be to save Japan, to save his team from disaster. So it was just a lot of fun. It was, like I said, it was a little bit of a slower burn than the breakneck speed that we got with episode 1. But I really enjoyed it. I really don't have any bad things to say about this one either, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Now, I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
How much do you want to bet that the character of Shota turns out to be Juggler from Orb, and that he's not actually, it's not just the actor who crossed over, but they actually bring the character back?
You talking about Zet's mentor?
No, basically the captain of the storage team,
right?
Who fought him in the dojo. That actor is the one who played Juggler, the main villain from Orb, Ultraman Orb, who was kind of basically like Ultraman Orb's brother. They're kind of very they had they were very close, and so it's the same actor, and it's not unusual for them to use same actors for multiple parts. So it's not it's not that far-fetched to think he's just a completely original character. At the same time, they bring back characters from previous seasons and series too. So it's not that far-fetched to also think that this might be, he might turn out to later on be a Juggler just pretending to be human.
I had thought about something along those lines when I was watching the show this morning. And I honestly thought that possibly his character could become the master that we saw in episode 1 that got sucked into that black hole created by
Zero.
Zero, yes.
Yeah.
That we could see him come back as Zero. And he's just here to build up Ultraman Z as the warrior he needs to become to save the Earth. So that was a thought I had already had. But I like your point too, that it could possibly be the character from Ultra Orb too.
Yeah, and just to kind of give some credence to it, the idea of it, because we know that Ultraman Geed and his human counterpart are going to show up in this series later on. So we've already had that announced in the press packet that Subaraya sent out, or Mill Creek sent out. Or Subaraya sent out. So yeah, it's possible that it could be, because spoilers for a small part of Ultraman Orb, but Juggler does kind of come around at the end. He actually kind of has a redemption at the end. So it's completely possible that he disguised himself as a human and stayed on Earth, and now he's the leader of this storage unit.
Completely plausible. I would almost put money on it. In fact, you and me actually may make a friendly wager on the side. Who knows? But yeah, I would probably put money on it.
Yeah. But yeah, I love the characters in this one. That's one of the things, and like I said, I will make comparisons to Orb just because it's the most recent Ultraman series that I watched. But one of the things that I did not enjoy about Orb was that the side characters didn't have much to do. I really enjoyed the main, Orb and his human alter ego, but the side characters just didn't have much to do, and so that bothered me when watching the series. This one, immediately in the first episode and the second episode, the side characters automatically, it's just like they already have more to do than the ones in Orb, and so I already like these characters more because they're doing stuff. I like I said, I like Shota. Now I do have a small issue, and it's not a big issue, but it is a little small one. I'm not happy with what they're doing with Yoko being kind of a little man crazy in a way.
Okay. Yeah.
And, this kind of like romance side angle that they're going with. But that's just a small thing. Overall, I still really enjoyed the episode.
Yeah, I really did too, and really, the only honestly gripe that I had with the episode didn't really have to even do with the episode itself. We're spoiled, Travis, so we get video on demand all the time, and so we don't have to deal with things like what are they called? Commercials. There we go. We don't have to deal with commercials, and these Ultra shows are not just, and I'm not just talking about YouTube ads. I'm not talking about those because I think those are we all get used to those. But I'm talking about legitimate, like Bandai Ultraman commercials are inserted into these episodes, and I'm like, okay, well, they could have saved us like maybe 5 minutes and cut out some of these ads and commercials, but I get why they did it. It's for kids. They're trying to sell toys and products and apps to download. I get it, but it does spoil you a little bit to not have to deal with those things. But that has nothing to do with the episode itself. I love the episode, like we've talked about, it just sort of does a little bit of world building and a little bit of plot building in this second episode. So it makes me look forward to episode 3. I can't wait I can't wait till they put out the promo for episode 3 this week.
Oh, well, if you stayed to the end of the episode, they always do show what's coming up next. Oh, and you're going to be happy with episode 3 because they bring back Gamora.
Ah, yes, I love Gamora. Gamora is, if you can't tell already, Gamora, although he is considered just to be a generic dinosaur kaiju, but he was one of the few kaiju in the original 66, the OGS, that really gave Ultraman a run for his money. And I just enjoy his design. And I know they bring back Gamora a lot throughout some of the more contemporary series as well. And they always do a great job with his character. Yeah.
It looks like he was because they mentioned in episode 2 how there's a bunch of kaiju that they have located that are hibernating underground, and he's one of them. And so they're trying to transport him while he's still hibernating, and in the process he wakes up and has to fight Zet.
Oh, so well, that's kind of a, I get it's a 60-year-old, it's a 60-year-old show at this point, but it's not really a spoiler. It's sort of the plot of episodes 26 and 27 of the original series. Like they were trying to put him to sleep and then transport him, and he woke up. Yeah, okay.
There's so much of Z so far, just in these 2 episodes that we've seen, that really is just kind of like a love letter to more than any of the other ones. Like, I mean, this is a series that's been going on forever. So, they've done this multiple times, but this is definitely a love letter to that original series from 66. Even to the point that you notice that this Ultraman doesn't speak when he's transformed. He only does the yeah.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Going back to that original Ultraman series where the Ultraman did not speak. He only did the yeah, which is something that they had actually moved away from in the more contemporary, modern Ultraman. They had started speaking and were would speak on a regular basis, but this one kind of takes it back to that original.
Yeah, after he flies away after the battle, you can hear "So watch."
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I picked up on that. It's altered. The audio is altered. It's a lot deeper sounding to fit the voice of this new Ultraman, to Ultraman Z. But it's there, and you can hear it, and it makes me happy.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to watching more of this series. It's going to be a lot of fun to keep watching.
Absolutely, me too. And I can't wait to do a sort of a mini. This is a mini review. Since this is sort of in real time, we're trying to review these in real time. And they're only available for like 2 weeks. It's really difficult to sit down and do a really in-depth review. So hopefully, Travis, these little mini reviews every couple of episodes are going to be super helpful for folks.
Yeah, I hope so. And when the series ends and we can just kind of do like a retrospective on the whole thing, we're going to give some scores and really talk about what we liked overall.
Yeah, we will.
But it's good that this entire episode is kind of dedicated to Ultraman, because this episode is supposed to be coming out on the 8th, and Ultraman Day is July 10th.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That was when the premiere, the first ever time that Ultraman appeared on television in Japan. So it is Ultraman Day.
All right. Yeah.
And so to continue the Ultraman celebration, let's move into our main topic where we discuss more Ultraman.
All right, let's go.
All right, so this week we are covering episodes 10 through 12 of the original Ultraman series from 1966. So we're not going to do the cast and crew because cast and crew is the same. So if you're interested in knowing who the cast and crew is, go back to the first episode where we covered episodes 1 through 3. But here's the plot breakdown, starting with episode 10.
Okay.
Episode 10, a dinosaur-like monster emerges from the depths of Lake Kitayama. And that's it. That's all I have. So, what are... I didn't even write down the episode title. That's bad. I should have wrote down the episode title at least. So, what are your thoughts on episode 10 of Ultraman 66?
The episode title is The Mysterious Monster Base. Just
The Mysterious Monster Base. Okay.
The Mysterious Dinosaur Base.
Mysterious Dinosaur Base. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. See, I messed it up too, Travis. I'm sorry. Okay, so this episode is mainly known for one thing, and that is this is the episode where we get to see Ultraman versus Godzilla, sort of. And we say sort of because, as we covered in the last episode where we talked about Godzilla versus the sea monster, basically what Subaraya did, they took the body of 64, and you can tell it's 64 because 64 had bigger hands, bigger claws, as opposed to 65 and 66. And then the head of 65, 66, the Daisenso Goji from Astro Monster and Sea Monster. And they spliced them together to form Jiras, this giant green and yellow dinosaur with a giant frill on the back of his neck, and
Just a big lettuce leaf attached to his neck.
Big lettuce leaf, yeah. So basically, Jiras lives in the lake and is fed and took care of by the dinosaur professor, who is this crazy old man that loves dinosaurs. There's a plot twist at the end. We'll cover that, and our protagonists have to find out, or have to solve the mystery rather, of why people are going missing around this lake. And so that helps build the tension up to the final reveal of Jiras, which I will admit is a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've known about Jiras for a while, because you can't be a Godzilla fan and not have heard of, or and not be in if you're in the loop of kaiju, of the kaiju community, you've seen and heard of Jiras, even if you haven't watched the episode. So the first time I watched this episode, I was expecting a lot, because everybody keeps talking about this kaiju, and there really isn't much to him.
No, there's not.
And I don't even like the way he looks. Like, he's just, oh man. I like the idea, the idea of this like frilled lizard type thing.
Like a Dilophosaurus. Is that what they're? Yeah, the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, from Jurassic Park. Like that. I think that's interesting. But man, does it look rough.
Yeah, it definitely looks rough. If it were me, I would have kept probably the body and the head the same. I would have even kept the frill the same, but I would have probably removed the classic Goji dorsal spines.
Oh yeah.
And replaced those with more frills, sort of like a Spinosaurus, sort of like the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3. That's the best point of reference that I can give people. Right. Just that big fan on his back. I would have probably replaced the classic Godzilla dorsal plates with that to make it appear to be more dinosaur-like, because honestly, and as trivial as it sounds, that's kind of what ruins it for me, is because it's too close to Godzilla without being Godzilla, and it just looks goofy, and the paint scheme is just very muddy and grungy looking, and the suit itself has seen better days. Let's just admit that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't want to beat it to death. I mean, we've seen it. People who've probably listened to this episode have already seen Jiras and have seen photos of Jiras, so they know what he looks like. I want to get into sort of the better parts of the episode and really it's the acting from the dinosaur professor that makes this episode.
His acting
it's just so over the top, and I love it. I love it.
Yes, he was a great villain. I love that character so much. He was so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So Travis, let me ask you, aside from, I know we've kind of beat up on Jiras. So aside from that, what are some things you really like about episode 10?
I'm with you on the acting from the dinosaur professor. That was great. I think the premise is a lot of fun. The premise of this scientist who's obsessed with dinosaurs and lizards, living in a cave basically, and doing experiments in secret, is really fun. I really liked it. And the only other thing that really stood out to me outside of that is I really liked the twist at the end of the episode.
Oh yeah, that was interesting.
Where we find out, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the episode yet, that the professor that we have been thinking is one professor turns out to actually be another professor.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of one old man, he's a different old man.
No, he's not really an old man though.
No, he's not. He's not. I just thought that was funny. It's like, oh, you're not that old man. You're the other old man. No, it actually is a really interesting twist, because you've been hearing about this professor who liked dinosaurs and studied dinosaurs, and who disappeared 15 years ago. And everyone says, that he was such a great scientist, and he had a lot of respect for dinosaurs and everything, not like this professor, this evil professor.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's revealed that no, he is that professor that disappeared 15 years ago.
Right.
So I thought it is a really good twist. I just thought that was funny. It's like, oh, you're not that old man, you're another guy.
Yeah, it's a really nice plot twist. And the professor's name, I have it down here. It's like one of the few names I'm able to remember. It's Dr. Nikaido, the professor that we're talking about, that went exploring around Loch Ness to go search for this plesiosaur, and went suddenly, quote unquote, missing, and then turns up as the dinosaur professor. It's a nice plot twist. We don't get a whole lot of interesting plot twists with the original series of Ultraman, but this one was pretty interesting and worth noting. But even if you're watching this for the first time, I feel like you can kind of see that coming from a mile away.
I actually, surprisingly, I didn't see it coming.
Okay,
it maybe it was a shock to me.
So maybe it's just me being maybe it's my bias. Maybe I'm just kind of biased a little bit because I've seen this before. So maybe that's maybe it's me thinking that because like I said, I've seen this episode before. But to me, I feel like they make it pretty obvious. They make it fairly obvious anyway when the SSSP is talking with the dinosaur professor in his lab. He uses, I believe he uses language like sort of to allude that maybe that professor is not necessarily dead, but again, that could be just me.
To me, I kept picking up the vibe that this professor had something to do with that one's disappearance.
Yeah, that's fair too. Okay.
Like I was picking up the vibe that this guy might have killed that professor, or maybe experimented on that professor, and maybe that professor is Jiras.
Possibly.
And so that's what I kept, I was looking for, a big twist. I knew a twist was coming just because, it was kind of broadcasting that there is some kind of twist, but what the twist ended up being actually did take me by surprise. It's not what I expected.
Yeah.
But outside of that, the fights, the Ultraman fight with Jiras was not very interesting. And Jiras's noise that he made, which is like a sped up Godzilla, is so annoying. It was so grating. It was just like, nails on a chalkboard sound.
It wasn't, to me, in my opinion, though, it wasn't that bad. It's one of the more brutal deaths that we see, especially early on in the series, because spoiler alert, Ultraman does kill Jiras basically by slicing his neck. I think that's the implication that they're saying there. They sliced his belly or sliced his neck after brutally ripping his giant lettuce frill off. But I thought the battle, although it was a little bit anticlimactic, I thought it was actually fairly entertaining because you got sort of this little pissing contest between Ultraman and Jiras toward the beginning of it when they first meet up with each other. So there's still some entertaining bits there to keep you, the viewer, occupied.
Yeah. You ready to move on to the next episode?
I'm ready if you are.
All right, let's move on to episode number 11. And again, I didn't write any of the episode titles down. I should have. But
I want to say it's the It's I think the scoundrel from outer space is what
Yeah,
it's
the scoundrel
called.
from outer
Or
space.
no,
That's it.
the rascal from the ruffian from outer space. I'll find it in a second. I'll let you
I
know.
think I think it can be translated multiple ways. So I think there's actually multiple. Like I think rascal, scoundrel. I think I've actually seen it written as multiple things because the word in Japanese kind of can be translated as rascal, scoundrel, whatever. But yeah, I have definitely seen it as the scoundrel from outer space or the rascal from outer space. But yeah, so this episode, a quick just plot summary. A con artist discovers a meteorite with the power to make wishes come true. What will the SSSP do?
Dun, dun, dun.
So let's talk about this episode.
Sure.
Let's
Sure. If we have to. Let's
so a big colorful marble falls from the sky.
Right.
And a bunch of kids find it.
Mm-hmm.
And they find out that whatever you're thinking of or wishing for when you're holding it or anywhere nearby, it turns into that.
Mm-hmm.
Then a con artist gets a hold to it and he decides to use it to play pranks on people by turning it into a monster, which ends up knocking him out. And then because he's unconscious, he's still, I guess, technically thinking of the monster. And so the monster just keeps going until he can wake up from being unconscious and stop thinking about it.
Right.
The idea of this episode is really cool. I actually kind of like it. It fits in with this is a kids show, so it fits in with the kind of kids theme of it. But what the heck is going on in this episode?
Okay, so the trope of the unknown object from outer space is nothing new. It's what we've seen it before. We'll see it again, not just in this series, but in other franchises.
Mm-hmm.
But the plot twist of it being able to grant wishes through telepathy is interesting. It really is. And if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of this ruffian, of this scoundrel, if you will, this con artist. And I don't know if playing pranks, if using a monster to play pranks on other people would be the first thing to come to mind if I had sort of infinite power with this orb from outer space.
I feel like this originally was meant to be one of the kids who gets the thing and then starts using it to play pranks, and then they decided to change it at the last minute for whatever reason.
That would make so much more sense.
Yeah, because all the decisions that this man is making are more like what a child would do if they had the power of this stone, this rock, this colorful marble thing. And so I feel like if he was a kid, it would make sense and it would fit better. But unfortunately, that's not what they did. And it's just weird. It's just weird to see a grown man just playing pranks by making a monster and then just cackling and laughing so weirdly. It's like, oh man. Okay, I do want to bring up one little thing. Now, Hoshino does not appear in this episode, which that's the kid sidekick for the SSSP.
Right.
But he still does kind of make an appearance because they explain that he's the reason that the SSSP gets the rock, the orb. Why Hoshino gotta be a little snitch? These kids found this rock that's granting them wishes, and Hoshino gotta ruin their fun by being a snitch.
Oh man. See, in my notes I originally had it where I think I made a reference to where I don't really care much for kid protagonists, and that was just sort of I'm rewatching this. It's been a little bit since I've seen this episode, but I before I even got to the meat of the episode, I had already wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time we ever see any reference to children is in like the first 5 minutes, because they're wishing for things like cake and a piano of all things. Not sure why a kid would want a piano, but okay. Maybe he's just a very intellectually, musically inclined child. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I like what you said there. It does make way more sense for it to be a child doing all this than a grown but adult, to censor myself. It does. It does. But you know, it's an interesting plot. There are some really good moments though. Specifically, sort of the comedic timing was really good. The one part where the reporter, I think it was the scientist that said, "Go ahead, test it out." And so the reporter wants to test it out, and he's thinking of something he's wanted all of his life, he says, and it's a bride. And it turns out to be, and in that moment you're like, oh, I feel really bad for this guy because he's lonely. But then it turns out to be another man in the room when the bride, when it turns back into something else, and they're like, "You fool!" And then it's just really this really funny moment that was fairly well done and really comedic.
Yeah. Now, can we talk about the just absolute bad sciencing that this scientist did by letting some random guy in the audience come up and like actually wish for something from the wish granting orb? Like you don't know what he's gonna wish for. He could wish for a thermonuclear bomb. You don't know. Why would you just let some random guy come up and do that?
That is malpractice in the highest order. That fictitious doctor should be disbarred.
Yeah. Oh man. But anyway, so yeah, I do like the tension that comes from the villain, quote unquote villain, of the guy being knocked out and unconscious, and them trying to wake him up and make, you know, and him having to wake up to get rid of the monster. Like I like that element of it. But other than that, there's nothing else in this episode that really stood out to me as spectacular.
Well, there is one thing, and I wouldn't say it's spectacular, but there is one thing that stands out to me, and that's Gango. Gango stands out to the kaiju, stands out to me as probably one of the more unique looking ultra kaiju. And it's interesting because I didn't realize this until I kind of looked at him a little bit closer, but he's just a modified, I think, Bemular suit. It's just a modified Bemular, like he's got alternate hands. He's got the two, whatever the heck those things are on his head.
And he's missing all the spikes on his back that Bemular has.
He's missing that and his tail. And he's got little nursing booties on, which I thought was funny. But anyway,
again, the design of this monster goes back to, this is what a monster. This is a kid's imagination of a monster. It's colorful, it's silly, it's goofy, and I like that. It makes no sense for a grown man to be envisioning a monster like that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's something that I really didn't even think of, honestly. That maybe possibly they had a child protagonist / antagonist planned for this episode and just never went through with it for some unknown reason. I'd be truly interested to know the backstory on this episode, if there is one.
Right. Yeah. I'd be interested in that too. Is there anything else you want to talk about with episode 11?
Not really. It's sort of it's an okay episode. It's got an interesting plot, some really fun moments. The kaiju Gango interesting. It's definitely unique, and I know that there are parts of the fandom that actually really do like the design. The fight, the ultra fight at the end, meh. But
Yeah.
this episode's okay. It's not my
Yeah.
favorite, but it works.
It's nothing spectacular, but it's not offensive in any way.
It's not.
Yeah. So moving on to episode 12. Now this one is called The Cry of the Mummy, or The Mummy's Cry.
I think the Cry of the Mummy.
I remember this one.
Yeah. And the only reason the only reason I remember that is because I was watching this on Movie Spree, the Mill Creek service, and for some reason it skipped ahead, and I had to go back and find this episode, and I just remember the title, so that's really the only reason I remember it myself.
Yeah. So the quick plot breakdown: a 7,000-year-old mummy is awakened by scientific experiments, and it goes on a rampage.
Mm-hmm.
When it's defeated by the SSSP, its dying cry activates or awakens a giant horse-looking kaiju. So, what are your thoughts on episode 12?
It is. It's a little darker. I want to say episode 10 is probably the darkest one of the three that we're talking about, but it's probably next in line. Episode 12 is probably the next in line as far as sort of a darker subject matter, because with the episode opens up with they're at this expedition site, they're at the expedition site, the archaeological dig, and they find the remains of this mummy, which, side note, I don't think that's what people looked like 7,000 years ago, but okay.
Yeah.
we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
This giant chimp face on it. It's like, oh, so that's what humans looked like 7,000 years ago. No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. In fact, that's borderline offensive, but okay. Anyway, it's really a fun episode. It's interesting. I like that. I like that the mummy and the giant Pegasus I just call it a Pegasus because that's kind of what it looks like, are tied together somehow. Like when the mummy gets in trouble, the Pegasus shows up, or when the mummy, it's like a fail-safe, or
right.
it's like a doomsday button where if the mummy dies, the giant Pegasus shows up. I wish that maybe we had gotten a little bit of backstory on how those two are connected together. I wish that we did get that, but there's only so much you can do within 20 to 25 minutes. So I understand why they didn't.
Yeah. I love whenever there's a mummy monster in a movie or TV show, because there's just not enough mummy kaiju.
Well, it's true.
And so I do love the whole idea of a mummy kaiju going on a rampage. I think it's really neat that we got a cameo by Akihiko Harada.
Dr. Sarazawa.
Yeah, Dr. Sarazawa, because last week's episode, he was in Atragon, and now he's in. So it's like our theme for the last couple of weeks last couple of episodes has been Akihiko Harada, because he's just showing up in them.
If only he showed up in the next film we're going to be reviewing this. The next film that we're going to be reviewing next. If only he showed up there. I don't know if he does or not. I don't think he does, but no, I could be wrong. He does.
But yeah, he was great. I like Ide is my favorite character.
Right.
Ide does really good in this episode. He's getting braver. Like if you take him in episode 12 versus him in episode 2, he's a go-getter now. Like he's seen enough monsters that he's just gonna dive right into it. Right. I think that there's a lot of great special effects in this, especially like when Arashi is attacking the Pegasus monster. The rocks that were exploding right next to him, that was really cool. That was really good effects there.
Yeah, they didn't look like just I I would assume paper mache or just whatever or something or props. They didn't look like that.
Yeah. But again, the monster fight kind of underwhelming. Although I do like it, I even sent to you. I was like, "Oh, this is where that Ultraman GIF comes from of Ultraman riding the weird looking horse thing." That's what
It is. It is. Yippee ki
Yeah.
Ultraman. This is because this is PG-13.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that's exact.
So
It took me a second to realize what you were referencing, and then I thought, oh yeah, he must be
One-
on that. He must be on that episode. Okay.
yeah. So that was interesting. Other than that, the monster fight was like nothing spectacular. Did they really have to show the monster on the ground just twitching after Ultraman killed him?
I know. I kind of felt bad for it. It was just like sort of like it's sort of like when you're watching a more recent movie and you see the protagonist's horse die. It's sort of like that. It was like I was like, why why did you show that? I mean, that's just not it's not right.
Yeah, it was so weird. It was so like they blinded the thing by blasting its eyes out.
Oh, I know, that was brutal.
And then Ultraman kills it and it's just laying on the ground twitching. Oh, it's like okay, this goes into, and this is going to go into my final thoughts for all 3 episodes, but really I have come and finally made peace with the fact that I am not a fan of Showa era Ultraman.
I think this is because we talked about it earlier in this episode, and this is where you told me that you're not a fan of Showa era Ultraman. Now, for me, I like Showa era stuff in general because it's campy, it's fun, you know, it's classic. There's just a certain charm to it, but I totally understand why you would not like this.
Yeah, and for people who have been listening to the podcast, and for people who know me, you know that I don't have anything against Showa era films because I love Showa era films. There's plenty of Showa era films. There's plenty of Showa era television that I like. I really like the Showa era Kamen Riders. There's a few of them, you know, a few of the different Showa era Kamen Riders that are really, really, really good, and I enjoy them a lot. But I just with the 66 series, with Ultra 7, with Return of Ultraman, and with Ultraman Ace, the ones that I've seen so far, I'm not rooting for Ultraman. I cannot connect with any of those Ultramen and root for them. I enjoy the team, especially in the 66 series. I really like the team that he's working with. I like Harada, the human counterpart of this Ultraman, but I just find myself like, I just do not enjoy watching him fight the monsters because it's needlessly brutal. It's more underwhelming than it is good to me, and I just don't enjoy it. So when it comes to the Showa era Ultraman, I guess I'm just not really a fan. But now that does change once we hit the Heisei era and the modern era, because there are a lot of the ones I've seen so far of those series that I really like. But it's just this early days Ultraman, I can't connect with it.
Right, and I get that. I totally get that because, like we talked about, you love more of the heroic side of Ultraman, and this is just basically monster fights, monster wrestling. So
Yeah. I mean, and you know, and Ultraman, the idea of Ultraman evolves, and you know, he becomes more of a hero of light. You know, that's what they refer to him as later on. But for these episodes, I'm like, he's not a hero of light because there is nothing light about him.
no, not at all. Now, one thing I thought maybe, because I put it in my notes, and I thought maybe you would appreciate it a about this episode, Travis, is because the Pegasus kaiju, which its name escapes me.
Yeah, I can't remember it.
Has a very interesting, familiar roar that you may have picked up on.
I actually didn't. I didn't.
Whoa.
I must have been distracted. I didn't.
You must have been. Well, it's a higher pitched or more sped up version of the Mothra roar or Mothra cry.
Okay.
I'm really surprised you didn't pick up on that. In fact, it's so weird because when I first watched, this is like the second time I've watched this episode. When I first saw it, I was a little bit taken aback, not because of that, because of the fact that it was just didn't fit the monster in general. I expected something way different. But then I thought, oh, that's Mothra. It's weird. That's weird. Okay, but it's Mothra. I thought maybe Travis would get a kick out of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that. I must have. I think I had by the time I got to that episode, I wasn't really. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to like the little details like that. So I might have just I just missed it. But yeah, that is interesting. Overall though, with that episode, with episode 12, I do enjoy it overall. Mainly because I enjoy the mummy.
Mm-hmm.
The mummy kaiju. That whole plot and that whole side of the story, how the SSSP has to take him down, how they try not to kill him to begin with, but then they're left no choice, and so it's kind of this tragic moment of having to kill the mummy. It's a really well done story, and really well done episode.
What did you think about the mummy laser eyes?
I mean, that's one of those things that just like it was the Showa era goofy, campy. Exactly. Like it doesn't bother me. Like I know it's campy, but it doesn't bother me.
But yeah, I think you're right. It is sort of a tragic character. Really, I think that anytime you see a mummy in cinema, is sort of portrayed as a tragic character. I have to go back and rewatch like the actual movies from the 2000s, The Mummy or whatever, to really make an informed decision on that. But anytime
the Brendan Fraser ones,
the Brendan Fraser ones.
Oh no, he is not a tragic character. The Mummy is not tragic at all in those.
Gotcha. But okay, so the old Universal Mummy.
But yeah, the old one, yeah, because and I get why it is kind of a tragic thing character, because inherently, it's the idea of we are the ones, humans are the ones disturbing his peace. Like this mummy was buried in the ground and was fine, and it was human intervention that caused it to wake up, and now it's in a world that it doesn't recognize, and of course it's going to go on a rampage. So yeah, I think that's why mummies in general tend to be a more tragic figure. So yeah, the episode to me just falls apart once you get the bigger kaiju.
Yeah, this would have probably worked better. I think we even said this for maybe a couple of Ultraman review back, like a couple of Ultraman episodes back, where we talked about the episode that featured Greenmons. This one probably would have worked better as an Ultra Q episode.
Yeah, just not even have Ultraman in it at all. Just have the SSSP have to handle it on their own, and it would have been great. Yeah. Any other little things that you want to say about this episode before we move into our final thoughts?
No. Well, we did forget to touch on just one little thing. We're now seeing the SSSP kind of pick up on Hayata being Ultraman.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. And the fact that it was Ide who was like, could it be? And I was like, yes, Ide, you're the smart one. I love you.
Right.
I love that. So yeah, that was a really good element in it too. All right. So final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on these 3 episodes of Ultraman.
Are we ranking them, or what are we doing here? Are we rank them, don't we? It's been a little bit since we've done an Ultra episode.
Yeah, we rank them. I think we've typically been ranking them, like which one's our favorite of the three,
Okay.
and stuff. But we don't do Godzuki scores because we're saving the Godzuki score for the overall series at the end.
Right.
Once we've
Okay.
seen the whole thing.
Yeah, once we hit like episode, I went 36, or no, is it more than that? I think it's 36.
Yeah, it's 30 something.
Yeah, something like that. So ranking these was pretty hard, since these are not actually my favorite episodes of the original series. My least favorite episode, I'm gonna have to go with episode 11. It goes at the bottom. Just although the story was fairly unique, Gango was an interesting looking kaiju. The overall silliness of the episode left me a little bit distracted, where I didn't really care much about it. And then what we talked about earlier today, about it just not making much sense to have an adult play that lead antagonist role. It should have really been a child. Probably episode 10 is next in line, right there in the middle. The story is fairly unique. It's fun, but it's the lackluster monster battle at the end left a little bit to be desired for me. It was a good episode for sure, just not my favorite. Plus, Ultraman versus Godzilla, aka, well, not really Godzilla, should have been a little bit more of a highlight, especially for fans of the Showa era, but it just really wasn't. It was interesting, and as a fan of dinosaurs, I enjoyed the episode. Just wasn't that great to me. So that puts episode 12 on top as my favorite. It took itself a little bit too seriously at times. The miniatures were well constructed, really well constructed, actually. There was plenty of action, and although both the Mummy and the Pegasus Kaiju don't look all that great, I liked how their stories and their backgrounds kind of intertwined with each other. The episode lays the groundwork for the rest of the for the rest of the storyline that would kind of continue throughout the original series, where the SSSP is suspecting Hayata as being Ultraman, and that subplot line does creep up from time to time from this point forward, especially, and it's just really interesting. I wouldn't necessarily call this a filler episode, but episode 12 is an important episode, I think, because it, like I said, it does lay that groundwork for a subplot going forward, where the SSSP is starting to sort of catch on to Hayata and him being Ultraman.
Yeah, as far as my final thoughts, I'm much like you. The episode 11 is at the bottom just because it is too weird. Nothing about it really stood out as spectacular to me. Episode 10 is right in the middle. I like the ideas that it had. I like the acting in it, but there was just Giros overall was underwhelming. But I did enjoy the third episode that we covered, episode 12, because I'm a sucker for mummy themed kaiju, and it felt very classic sci-fi and classic, old school adventure. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Again, it did fall apart once the giant kaiju came out and and Ultraman showed up. Ultimately, I appreciate the history and significance of this original series of Ultraman. I get it. I understand its significance. I know how important it is. I will never say it's not important or significant to the tokusatsu genre and what it did for the tokusatsu on television. But I am having a hard time watching it at times. I'm finding it very hard to watch at times. I find myself not really enjoying the Ultraman segments and wishing he just wasn't part of the show and it was just about the SSSP.
Right.
I'm having a hard time connecting with him as a hero, but maybe I was just grumpy this week and that's why I'm so hard on these episodes. Maybe I'll change my mind as we keep
Now,
going.
man, you can't use that excuse for every week. Now,
I know. I'm always grumpy. I'm a grumpy old man. Leave me alone. Get off my lawn. So yeah, but maybe my feelings will change as we get further along into the into reviewing these episodes, but just right now that's just how I feel about this particular Ultraman series.
No, I totally get it. And as much as I do like the original Ultraman series, the latter episodes are better, I think. When you get into the upper teens and in the early 20s, for those episodes, they do get better. These earlier ones are, I will agree, tough to watch. But I will always sort of have a love for the original and respect it for what it was and sort of the groundbreaking, the groundbreaking series that it was for the world of tokusatsu and kaiju and stuff. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand your gripes with it. I totally, I actually agree with a lot of them, a lot of the critiques. But I probably am more of a fan of it than you are because like I said, I do enjoy more of the campier, sillier Showa era stuff, and that's why I can kind of look over some of the flaws in this very first season of Ultraman. So, but as a side note, Travis, the kaiju's name in episode 12 is called Dodongo.
Dodongo. Okay. Dodongo. That's what it was. Okay, dokie. Yeah. I mean, and it's not like I don't like campy, silly things. I mean, there are plenty of campy shows that I like, and silly stuff that I like. So it's not even the silliness or the campiness that bothers me. Is why I'm having a hard time connecting with this, because I watch Batman 66. I watch the 60s Green Hornet series. I watch those shows and they are fun. And they're just as fun as anything else to me. For sure. So it's not the campiness that's making it hard for me to connect with this. It's just there's something about the way Ultraman is portrayed in this early era that doesn't set well with me. Whereas later on in the Heisei era, all the way down to the more modern ones, I feel like I enjoy them more.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, that's just me. And that's just me being a grumpy old man.
So if you want to tell Travis just how wrong he is, where can folks do that? Oh, well, I'm sorry. We need to give our trivia question for the next episode. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, let's give the trivia question real quick, and then I'll give everybody the places where they can rip me a new one for my bad opinion on Ultraman. So the trivia question, hinting to the next episode that we're going to be covering: which dueling kaiju film does Quentin Tarantino, Brad Pitt, and Nicolas Cage cite as an influence on their careers?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know the answer, but it's still interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that these three big Hollywood people were influenced by this Japanese giant monster film in their careers. So, yeah. But if you want to reach out to us and tell me how wrong I am about Ultraman, or just answer the trivia question that we just gave, you can do that on our social medias at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter, Kaiju Weekly Pod on Instagram, or you can email us kaijuweekly@gmail.com. We want to say thank you to everyone for listening to this episode, because we really appreciate you listening and sharing it with your friends. We enjoy we enjoy doing this, and we're glad that people are enjoying listening to it. You can also find us at the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group, and also follow Michael at Kaiju Groupie Pod and the Kaiju Groupie on Twitter and Instagram. We also want to say a big thank you to Brian, Shijir, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. You too can also support the podcast at patreon.com/Kaiju Weekly Pod. Or you can support us by leaving a review on Apple's podcast app. We love seeing those reviews, and it helps us get discovered by more people. So if you want to help the podcast grow, that's a way to do it. You can also help support us and help us grow by subscribing to our YouTube channel, because we're still trying to reach 100 subscribers by the end of July. So check it out. And we post a lot of interesting things on the YouTube channel that sometimes don't make it into the episodes. And Michael does a lot of work in trying to pair the visuals with the audio, so you have something to watch while you're also listening to the podcast.
Yep.
And I think that's everything. So until next time, I'm going to say help control the mummy population. Have your, what was it? Dodongos?
Dodongos.
Dodongos, spayed or neutered.
Later, guys.
Bye.